G'day guys, how are we? Welcome to another edition of What's Your Verdict? Now, this is a little bit of a contentious one, I will say. It's a fight from only about 3 weeks ago. At the time of this recording, I was lucky enough to be at this fight. Of course, I'm talking about George KAMBOSOS Jr. and MAXI Hughes for the IBO Lightweight Championship of the World. It took place on July 22nd, 2023 at the Firelake Arena in Shawnee, Oklahoma. As I said, it was for the IBF Lightweight Title. George KAMBOSOS Jr. went into this fight 20 wins and 2 losses. MAXI Hughes went in with a 26-5-2 record. George KAMBOSOS 134.5 pounds. Hughes 134.75 pounds. So, as I said, a very contentious verdict. I will say straight off the bat that watching it live, and I've only just viewed this for the second time, I will say, but I was there live, and I will say on the night, I thought that MAXI Hughes won a lot of the early rounds. George KAMBOSOS came back into the fight, and I thought it was a very, very close decision. A little bit different, as you will see in my re-watching of the fight. So stick around and go through as we view all the highlights of the round, and of course I will score the fight or score the round at the end of proceedings. So let's get into it. I was actually before we move on, the last fight that we did was Manny Pacquiao won Manuel Marquez, the first fight. I had it, I can't remember the actual score, but I had Pacquiao winning the fight. 73% of you agree with me in that Manny Pacquiao was the rightful winner. So let's get into round number 1 from the Firelake Arena in Shawnee, Oklahoma. I thought, as could be expected, very much a feeling out round. George KAMBOSOS taking centre ring. Hughes looking to box from the outside. See there, George KAMBOSOS poking the jab. Hughes looking to counter that jab with that straight left hand. Thought minimal punches were thrown throughout the fight. But as you can see there, MAXI Hughes looking nice and comfortable. He's looking to counter, as I said, that jab from George with that straight left hand, that really sneaky left hand. I thought, again, as I said, pretty much a feeling out round, but I thought that MAXI Hughes just caught George a little bit unawares with his crispness of his punches, and I thought that he actually settled really well early. And see the end of the first round there, I actually gave MAXI Hughes the first round 10-9. As I said, it was sort of close-ish. I didn't think George really landed anything of note where you would have seen there that I thought MAXI Hughes did land a couple of counter left hands that was enough to give him the round. So after the first round, MAXI Hughes 10-9 on my unofficial scorecard. Let's get into round number 2. There was another largely uneventful round, minimal punches thrown. George KAMBOSOS looking to find his range. You can see there again, poking out his jab. MAXI Hughes looking to wait for that jab and then come over the top, or actually making him draw him into throwing that right hand and then countering with that really quick left hand. George continues to walk forward, and Hughes very content to box from a distance. I thought George KAMBOSOS really pushed the action. Hughes a little bit reluctant to punch or engage at this stage. Again, very few exchanges between the two. You see there, MAXI Hughes, a little bit of success with that counter left hand. But I thought that, you see there, George with his own right hand. I thought that George sort of pushed the action enough in this round to take a very close round. I thought on the night that MAXI Hughes did enough to win the round, but having rewatched it, you can see there again a nice right hand thrown by George on the bell of round number 2. I thought it was just enough, a very, very close round, like the first one. I think to split both rounds 1 each was a fair result. You can see there, George KAMBOSOS 10-9 evens up the scorecard, 19-19 after 2 rounds. Into round number 3, and as has been the trend of the first 2 rounds, George KAMBOSOS continuing to push forward. Hughes on the move, content just to box nice and tight, hands nice and tight, just poking, trying to draw George into throwing that right hand and then countering with the left hand, as you saw then. And I thought just in this round 2, George seemed to be reaching a little bit. He just looked a little bit uncomposed, really starting to reach, starting to lunge, and I thought that really worked into MAXI Hughes' favour. And I thought George, for the first time, did look a little bit frustrated. And why wouldn't he? Because Hughes continued to land those really good left-hand counters. I thought this was probably the first clear-cut round of the fight. I thought that MAXI HUGHES, you see there, another uppercut there, fought a very, very smart round, very, very tight round, and a very, very impressive round to, I thought, take the fight. You can see there, just peppering George with those counter lefts. So I'll get the round up there. So there it is there. I gave round number 3 to MAXI HUGHES, which puts him in front 29-28. Into round number 4. George, you'd think by now he'd be looking to, get his range, get his distance. MAXI HUGHES certainly did, but I thought George just looking to maybe close the distance a little bit more. But HUGHES boxing very, very smart. You can see their hands nice and tight, looking to counter. George looking frustrated coming in and getting picked off. I thought George looked to be initiating everything, but was just being countered by everything from MAXI HUGHES and then tied up really, really well. And you can see those side steps as well from MAXI HUGHES, just keeping George off balance there. And I thought just KAMBOSOS was really playing into MAXI HUGHES' hands by rushing in and just throwing wild punches. There wasn't really any rhythm or rhyme to what George was doing. He's just a little bit frustrated. I think he probably didn't expect MAXI HUGHES to be as clean as he was this early in the fight, and I just think he's been caught a little bit unawares by the skill and timing of MAXI HUGHES, and you can see there I've given MAXI HUGHES another round, so it gives him 3 rounds to 1 to George KAMBOSOS, which makes him be in front by 39-37. As I said, George just a little bit flustered, a little bit off balance. And definitely being caught unawares, I think, by the game plan of MAXI HUGHES. Let's go to round number 5 now. I thought it was another really good round for MAXI HUGHES. I thought he boxing really well, countering really well. You can see there he's actually initiating play. You can see there too the scorecard of the unofficial judge at ringside had the same score as me, 39-37. And again, I thought that George looking frustrated, continually being beaten to the punch, continually being countered. And HUGHES, 5 rounds in, continuing to stick to a very, very good game plan. Not initiating anything, not engaging too much with George KAMBOSOS, content just to box and move, let George KAMBOSOS be first. You can see there George actually landed a pretty good right hand, but MAXI HUGHES comes back with an even better left hand. And I thought at this stage, George was looking very, very flustered. And again, I thought a really clear-cut round to MAXI HUGHES. So that gives him round number 5, 10-9. And I've got it 49-46 for MAXI HUGHES. And at this stage, George KAMBOSOS with a lot of work to do. Let's go into round 6, almost at the halfway mark. And like all the others, I thought another really good round by MAXI HUGHES. I thought he was boxing beautifully, looking really comfortable in there. George, on the other hand, hasn't really altered his game plan to this point. Continues just to go after MAXI HUGHES, not really cut off the ring, just looking to land that right hand. And again, I think he was really surprised at the quality of opponent in front of him. I really think that George might have thought that this wouldn't have been an easy fight, but he would have MAXI HUGHES' measure by now. But as I said, didn't change strategy at all, and continuing to wear counter punches at will from MAXI HUGHES. And again, HUGHES has stuck to a really good game plan throughout, has not deviated, and is content just to box, move, be tight, poke, wait for George KAMBOSOS to punch, and then counter with that lightning left hand. So really good game plan again by MAXI HUGHES. You can see there, beautiful left hand, and he's just catching George, who's just been caught unawares and by surprise this whole fight, and has not been able to do anything to change the course of this fight, except maybe shake his head at MAXI HUGHES. So I've got to say, the 6th round, I've given it another one to MAXI HUGHES, and you can see there, 59-55 for MAXI HUGHES. Now, I think from memory, I did give him 5 out of the 6 rounds on the night watching it live, but I can't remember what rounds were which. But same thing there, 59-55. It's probably the second half of the fight that just caught me a little bit by surprise. So let's get into the second half of the fight. Round number 7. A lot better round for George, I thought, but I think it was mainly due to the inactivity from HUGHES. You can see there through a nice left hand, but I thought George really settled a little bit better in this round. I thought he continues to push the pace, did George Kambosos, initiated all the exchanges, and Hughes just boxed cautiously, but without as many punches being thrown, and George was probably waiting for that counter left and was actually able to counter the counter. George Kambosos trying to lift the pace, but he's getting very frustrated because MAXI Hughes refuses to engage. He's content just to box and look for that left hand. But again, I thought that George did a lot better job this round of actually looking out for that counter left hand and throwing his own punch. You can see there, threw a right hand, threw a left hook, and I thought got the better of the majority of this round. I thought George really tried hard to get himself back into the fight. And had a lot more success. And I thought he was just busy enough to take round number 7. So after 7 rounds, and a lot better round for George Kambosos, was enough to give him the round, but still he trails 5 rounds to 2, or 68-65 on my unofficial scorecard. So into round number 8, and unlike probably the last round, I thought this sort of George, again, wasn't overly busy, allowed MAXI Hughes to actually come back at him. Was a largely uneventful round, I will say, which can happen in these types of fights where the guys, they've got 5 rounds to go, tend to take a little bit of a round off. But I just thought MAXI Hughes picked it up a little bit and got sort of the momentum back in his favour. So as I said, an uneventful round, George coming forward, Hughes retreating, boxing well, see a nice left hand landed there. George continues to chase Hughes, but surprisingly refuses to cut the ring off. He allowed MAXI just to move to his left, move to his right, and didn't really offer a lot, I thought, in terms of winning the round. So I thought Hughes boxed well for the majority of the round, continuing to pick George off. George tried hard, but I thought that MAXI Hughes did enough to win the round 10-9. So after 8 rounds, I have it 6 rounds to 2, or 78-74 in favour of the underdog, MAXI Hughes, and defending champion. Don't forget that he was the defending champion, although George was the A side, if there is such a thing, in a fight between an Australian and Englishman in Shawnee. So you can see there, ESPN have it the same as me, 78-74 in favour of MAXI Hughes. So again, same theme as the previous rounds. George moving forward, Hughes boxing well from a distance. Kambosos continues to look frustrated, continuing to look for anything, any angles, anything that might just put the fight back in his favour or slow MAXI Hughes down, but really struggled to get anything going. Hughes looking very, very comfortable at this stage of the fight, I will say, and is really content just to let George come to him and counter with those really crisp punches, especially that really sneaky left hand right down the pipe. Didn't think a lot really landed there. And you can probably see there the frustration from George, winding up his punches, just really looking for anything that can just get him into this fight, of which he's really struggled so far. So again, I've got to say, another round for MAXI Hughes puts him up 7 rounds to 2, or 88-83 on my unofficial scorecard. And George, he's pretty much got to get a knockout to win from this point. So let's get into the final 3 rounds of the fight. Round number 10. George, I think at this stage, looking desperate to pick up the pace, contrary to what he said after the fight. I think he probably knew it was either close or he was behind, and really tries to get things going here. And one thing I thought that that probably was to MAXI Hughes' detriment at this stage of the fight is that he didn't really look to close out the fight in a spectacular fashion. He was quite content to stick to the game plan. There's nothing really wrong with that, but when you are the B side, you have to really win those last few rounds convincingly, I thought, and he just refused to engage and punch really sparingly. So thought George had success in the exchanges, still having a little bit of trouble with the counters, but handling a lot better. Kambosos, I thought, won the round through more his pressure and his work rate. You see there, MAXI Hughes still having some success with his punches, but I thought that George did enough in there, and you can see there actually made MAXI Hughes miss with that counter left hand. Good work rate, good punches thrown. I thought that was enough to win George Kambosos the 10th round, 10-9, but he's still behind 7 rounds to 3, 97-93. MAXI Hughes at this fight, at this stage of the fight, with the fight in the bag. So into the championship rounds, 11 and 12. Let's get into it now. I thought MAXI Hughes picked up the pace just a little bit, but George, I think, knew he had the the fight in the balance. I thought he probably knew that he was behind, contrary, as I said, to what he said after the fight. Much the same as round 10. George pushing forward, desperately trying to close out the fight big. Hughes still boxing well, but I just thought he allowed George to dictate the action a little bit more in this round. Again, no meaningful punches really landed. But I thought that George, a lot better pressure in this round. And I just thought, remember thinking at the time that MAXI Hughes, he's got to probably pick up the pace a little bit. He's got to win these last couple of rounds to really put the exclamation point on it, because he's allowing George to come forward. And when there's not a lot of meaningful punches being landed, the judges will always go for the fighter that's being aggressive, that's pushing the action, especially when a fighter has a reputation of George KAMBOSOS. So I thought, even though both fighters had their moments, you can see there MAXI Hughes landing the uppercut, but George coming back with the right hand. MAXI Hughes, again, having a little bit more success there. But I just thought overall for the majority of the round that George KAMBOSOS just did enough to convince the judges that that round was his. So, again, it was a little bit in the balance, but I'm looking through the judges' eyes here. I gave the round to George KAMBOSOS 10-9. But still behind 7 rounds to 4, 106 to 103, going into the final round. So let's get into it as the guys touch gloves in the middle of the ring. Both fighters pretty much finished the fight as it started. George KAMBOSOS pushing forward, trying to corner MAXI Hughes, trying to land those big punches inside. But MAXI Hughes continuing to box very, very well, sticking to the game plan. That's one thing I will give MAXI Hughes a lot of credit for. At no point during this fight did he deviate at all from the game plan, which was to stick and move, let George KAMBOSOS come to him, pick him off with those counter left hands, the right hook, left uppercut in close, and then off to the left or to the right. Really, really great plan from the team of MAXI Hughes. I thought George really tried hard to close it out. But I thought MAXI Hughes had all the answers in this round. You can see there, throws a good left hand, right hook. George KAMBOSOS continues to miss his punches. And I thought MAXI Hughes really closed out the fight really well. Not a lot of scoring punches in the 12th round, but I just thought that MAXI Hughes did enough to win a very, very close round, to win the last round 10-9. And on my unofficial scorecard, to win the fight 116 to 112. Now, to the official scorecards, Gerald Ritter had it 115, 113 for George KAMBOSOS. Joseph Mason had it 117, 111 to George KAMBOSOS, which I cannot get my head around. And David Sutherland had it 114, 114, which, look, you could probably make a case for that. But 2 out of 3 judges gave George KAMBOSOS the win by a majority decision. And I've got to say, I'm sorry, I cannot agree with that call, but that's the judge's decision. Further to this these scorecards, I will say, as I said, Gerald Ritter 115, 113 for KAMBOSOS. Joseph Mason 117, 111. KAMBOSOS should never judge another fight again, if you ask me, or at least be suspended for a long time until he learns how to judge a fight. David Sutherland 114, 114. The fans on BoxRec. Now, if you haven't done this before, make sure you do it. You can just go to the fight. There's a little icon you can click that says score the fight. Go on there and score it, and it puts your scores up against all the other fans out there. The fans had it 117, 111 for MAXI Hughes, or 9 rounds to 3. They had it comprehensively to MAXI Hughes. Now, I must admit, I probably gave a few of the close rounds to George KAMBOSOS, a couple MAXI Hughes' way, but I was really trying to look at this fight through the eyes of a judge looking at an A-side fighter up against a B-side fighter. I know MAXI Hughes was the champion, but at the end of the day, George KAMBOSOS just signed a lucrative contract with Top Rank. He was the A-side, like it or not, former undisputed lightweight champion. Of course, he deserves to be. But I did try and watch it through the eyes of those judges looking at George KAMBOSOS, and I'm sorry, I just cannot find a way that George Kambosos won this fight. Now, I was there. I was, going very, very hard for George Kambosos. They were very, very kind to myself over there. They welcomed me into the fold, gave me access that I wouldn't have previously or gotten without them. So I had to keep that in mind. But this show is objectively looking at these fights. And as I said, I cannot find a way to give George Kambosos anywhere near a victory. So 116, 112 is my unofficial scorecard. The fans agree with me, 117, 111. Unfortunately for MAXI Hughes, they didn't agree and they gave the fight to George Kambosos by a majority decision. How'd you have it? Make sure if you look at this fight within 24 hours after watching this on Instagram with a poll, I will reveal those scores on our next episode. But as I said, how did you have it? Make sure you put it in the comments below. I want to hear what you have to say. I have a feeling how I think a lot of you guys are going to vote, but put it down there and let's see what you guys think. So again, thanks for watching, guys. Look forward to the next episode and we'll catch you then.